can. Wouldn't it be great if you're on that beach and a drinks trolley comes past and Susie's in charge? What are you offering us from your trolley today?
It's from Track Brewing Company in Manchester. I thought you might like this one. It's called Sansa, 0.5% IPA, so alcohol-free, Montuca and Peacherine hops.
Wow, everything in one glass. That sounds great. Matt will have. Matt doesn't want one. I'll have his because I can, because it's 0.5.
There you go.
Today's confession comes from Andrew as a PG certificate. I think that's about right. Father Simon, Brother Matthew, Sister Susie, and Mother Supreme Holly. My name is Andrew, although it isn't. And I wrote to you last year to confess how I persuaded my wife to walk to our car whilst we were on holiday in Jersey. Since then, I've reflected deeply on my past, and I've realised that on reflection, there are other things that I've done wrong in the past. You surprise us not at all, Andrew. Back in the late 1980s, I served in the Royal Air Force as a police officer, a bit like Jack Reacher was a military policeman. I was just like that.
Just like him. Yeah.
Sure you were, Andrew. Alongside our normal duties on the base, we would regularly patrol the perimeter roads to ensure that all was well with the world and the communists weren't trying to infiltrate our top secret base. I think Andrew's lost touch with reality at this point. Though these were the 80s, there was a Cold War.
It was true, wasn't it?
At the time, the vehicle of choice for the RAF police, now get this, so this is important work. You're in the police for the RAF, and their vehicle of choice, a green Vauxhall Chevette Estate.
Oh, good.
It was dependable enough, but hardly a thing of beauty. You can therefore imagine our excitement when we learned that we were about to receive brand new black Ford Escort Estates, complete with blue lights, a siren, and a roof-mounted spotlight. To a young RAF policeman, this was the equivalent of being handed the keys to the Batmobile. As you can imagine, one of our regular nighttime duties was to patrol the roads surrounding the base. Along these roads were numerous secluded picnic areas and parking spots where young couples would often gather late at night to play an enthusiastic game of Cluedo.
Of course they would, yeah.
To help pass the long evening shifts, we developed what seemed at the time to be a harmless bit of fun. We would switch off every light on our vehicle and quietly creep up into one of these secluded areas in our completely black Ford Escort. Once we were close enough, we would simultaneously activate the headlights, the spotlight, the blue lights, and the siren. The effect was immediate and dramatic. On more than one occasion, participants in these midnight games of Cluedo would exit their vehicles with remarkable speed, occasionally forgetting important items of clothing.
Oh dear.
Because they had shed them, and for some reason or another, they had to leave the scene, and they'd forgotten them.
Yes.
Having successfully startled the players, we would switch everything off again, silently disappear into the darkness, and continue our patrol as if nothing had happened. We knew, of course, that our behaviour was somewhat questionable. However, we also felt fairly confident that no official complaints would be forthcoming.
You're back,
After all, explaining why you were playing Cluedo in a picnic area at midnight might raise a few questions of its own. But looking back now, more than 40 years later, I realised that our jolly japes may have caused a certain amount of distress, and for that I ask forgiveness. Curiously, my guilt is not directed towards the majority of the Cluedo enthusiasts we startled over the years. No, it is directed towards one particular participant whom we unexpectedly illuminated one evening, who was my boss. What? If he had chosen the conservatory with his lead piping, all would have been well.
Come on.
But he didn't, so it wasn't. Needless to say, the incident was never spoken of again. Yours repentantly, Andrew, but not really. Well, I suppose if you've just got an exciting new kind of Batmobile car, you want to use it to full effect, but creeping up on people who are just sharing a game of Cluedo and rattling the dice, I don't think maybe that's not fair. So, what do you say, Suze?
Well, Andrew, wasn't you supposed to be working? I feel like that's what maybe I need to highlight. Shouldn't there have been better things to do with your time? And also, just don't need to put the spotlight on as well as the headlights. That's just, no one needs to see that. You knew it was questionable yourself, and although very, very funny, I can't believe you've found your boss, so I just can't forgive you. For
Jack
those
Reacher
reasons.
wouldn't have done that, I don't think.
Well, we don't know,
Far
do
better
we?
things to be doing.
Brother Matthew.
I'm going to forgive. I mean, you've got to point the finger somewhat at the people deciding to, play Cluedo right next to an RAF base. Really? I mean, there's a good chance someone's going to be coming round.
On patrol?
Yeah, exactly. They're going to have patrols, aren't they? What were you expecting? What was the boss doing?
Yes.
The boss? Right, I mean,
Who presumably signed off on the car in the first
Clearly.
place.
Or maybe find a hotel, because they also stage Cluedo events.
Do they?
So I understand.
Better get a travel log.
Yes. So for all of those reasons, I'm going to forgive.
Okay. People's verdict, please, for Andrew. Does he get your forgiveness? Yes or no? 61054 on the text. And the first word is Simon. Before the news, we had a Cluedo-themed confession, another one, involving RAF policemen, lots of games of Cluedo, and their boss, who really shouldn't have been doing what he was doing. The people's verdict is clear.
Forgiven, says George. Absolutely hilarious. I don't approve of people playing Cluedo in car parks, so I am totally on the policeman's side. Steve says, forgiven. In a public space, a good chance of Cluedo being interrupted. I myself came across a car in a similar situation whilst I was out walking the dog.
Oh, yeah.
And Kath says, totally forgiven. Even as an enthusiastic mobile Cluedo player in my youth, this is hilarious. Every player knows there is a high chance of being caught at some point.
That is probably true. So it's your story, please. Confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I was just checking that you do approve
Yeah.
of that message.
Yeah, sure.
Also, you can provide us with some refreshment. Where are we going for this one?
I can. I've gone for a double dry hopped or DDH hazy pale ale, just for Matt, 5.5%. It's called The Things We Say, Mosaic, Raku, and Strata hops.
Whatever that means. DDH, remember that one? It's
DDH.
a DDH.
DDH, double dry hopped.
Yeah, double dry hops. What you have to have these days.
Of course,
You can't have
yes.
single dry hops. What's the
No,
point
no,
of that?
why would you
Double
bother?
dry hopped.
Today's confession comes from Max. It's slightly distasteful, and
Good.
we'll make it
No.
like 12, maybe, something like that. So, Matt Hollis is in the team, says Max. I never intended to reveal this story to anyone, but following a previous confession I had shared with the Greatest Hits Drive Time Inquisition, I thought it was time for honesty. I mentioned to my wife that I contacted your program begging for forgiveness for a previous misdemeanor. Her eyes flared as the color drained from her face. She took a deep breath before saying, "You didn't tell them about the French trip, did you?" I reassured her that under no circumstances would I ever let anyone know about that story. Certainly not the GHR team, because there might be some other people listening. Well, Simon, I think my conscience must finally be cleared, whatever you said to your wife.
Yeah.
In the summer of 1989, my wife and I decided to go on a road trip to France in our little red Fiat Uno. We had a fabulous time touring the country for 2 weeks. At the end of the holiday, we once again crossed the channel back to Blighty, driving along the M2 and onto the M25 towards the M11. We had stopped on the M2 to fill up with petrol, and Doris, we'll call my wife for legal reasons as I can't afford a divorce, asked if I wanted to use the facilities before our next stop.
Yeah,
and
well
I
done.
declined.
Nice reminder.
Yeah, but I said no. Had I taken the time to spend a penny, this confession would not be necessary. But I didn't, and so it is. Once we saw the signs for the M11, I began to feel a little pressure from my bladder.
Okay.
I was confident that once we got onto the A1, we could stop. But unfortunately, and to our complete surprise, the traffic came to a halt about half a mile from the M11. At this point, Doris noticed that I was fidgeting and squirming in the driver's seat. She asked what was up, and I confessed that I should have gone when we stopped for fuel, and now I was desperate to relieve myself. Everyone who has tried to make this
Of course.
calculation
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
pulled up into a traffic jam
Yes.
will know exactly what Max is thinking about here. I began to scan the back seats of our little Fiat in search of a solution, or something to contain a solution, maybe. I spotted a 1.5 litre bottle of Appleade.
Oh, yes.
That was almost completely empty, almost. By some stroke of luck, the plastic bottle was sporting a wider neck than your average container for fizzy drinks.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah. It's all good news so far.
Why that's relevant. I reached into the back and retrieved the bottle. Doris gave me a look that has remained etched on my face for almost 40 years. You're not going to do that. Was probably the most pointless thing she could have said. What was the alternative? I unscrewed the top placing it on the centre of the steering wheel before handing the bottle to Doris. I then loosened the knot from my tracksuit bottoms, slipping them past my bottom to my knees.
Well, we don't need to get into the technicals now, really.
The rest, I'm sure you can imagine.
Yeah, there we go.
Once business had been completed,
Yes.
and my bladder was back to its original shape, I handed the three-quarters full bottle to Doris so I could pull my trackies back up. She held the bottle as if it contained nitroglycerin.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
As the whole process had required both our full attention, we hadn't noticed that the traffic had started to move. The car behind us beeped his horn and I immediately pulled away. Unfortunately, the jolt had dislodged the top from its perch on the steering wheel, which fell to the floor under the pedals. We had to drive for what seemed like forever before reaching the green signs to the A1. But soon we saw a sign showing, ironically, a large capital P, half mile. I pulled over, bringing the car to a standstill. Doris was sweating profusely, still holding the bottle firmly with both hands. I opened the door, leaning to retrieve the bottle top. I went to the passenger door, opening it in order to secure the contents of the bottle, and I turned to look for a bin in which to dispose of the bottle. I had driven to the far end of the lay-by in order to achieve an air of privacy. The bin was in the centre of the lay-by, and I could see it had not been emptied recently. Doris said there was a blue plastic bag in the back and I should place it in there. I did as I was instructed and retrieved the bag. As I removed it, a baguette fell to the ground. I looked round and noticed a young man, a hitchhiker, standing at the entrance to the lay-by, holding a sign which said, "The North." I smiled at him nervously and put the baguette back in the bag along with the bottle. The Appleade bottle, 3/4 full, as you might remember. I walked slowly to the bin and set the bag down next to it. Again, I looked at him and smiled and pointed down at the bin.
What?
I wish to beg forgiveness, not from my wife, but I'm begging forgiveness from the young man, because as I rejoined the A1, I looked in the rearview mirror to see him picking up the bag and waving to me and giving me a big thumbs up for what he had interpreted as an act of generosity and kindness in leaving him a gift of food and drink.
No.
And so therefore I'm afraid the die is cast, Max, as you can tell. I did say it was distasteful.
Yeah.
As far as Susie's concerned, I think she's, it's not going to look good, Max, but, let's see what happens.
Well, no, it made me feel a bit sick, if I'm honest, Max. Like, just, how old are you, Max? Like, I'm potty training my toddler at the moment, and you always go for a tactical wee before you leave the house.
Tactical
If
wee,
you make a stop, you might not feel like you want to go, but once you're sat there, maybe you'll have one, and that will save you squirming in your seat when you're in the journey. I just can't believe you didn't know that. An Appleade bottle? No.
Who knew that an Appleade bottle had a wider top? I didn't know that. Did you know that, Matt?
No, I didn't. We all know it now, don't we?
What's your
Lenore
message?
bottles.
What would you say for Max?
I'm going to forgive, but I mean, I was with Max all the way until he points at the bottle. Why are you pointing to the bottle with the man? Because he's obviously going to think that's for you. So why has he left him a baguette as well? Doesn't make any sense at all. But he had to go, didn't he? Didn't know there was going to be a traffic jam on the A1. Who'd have thought? That's never happened before. So all those things coming together.
Yes.
But he found a solution with the Appleade. But amazing that it was Appleade, wasn't it? Because it really was unfortunate that he definitely would have thought that was Appleade in that bottle. But everything's okay, and I'm sure as soon as he got anywhere near that liquid, he realised what was going on.
Yes, I think so.
I thought you were a bit weird. So for all those reasons, I'm going to forgive.
61054, that is the text, and you put Simon and then you say forgiven or not for Max. 61054. Just before the news, we had a confession from Max. A story of a motorway, a full bladder, an empty bottle of Appleade, a lay-by, a baguette, and a hitchhiker, in no particular order. Anyway, the verdicts are in. Here we go.
Forgiven, says Faye imbued. If you've got to go, you've got to go. I find even if I spend a penny before I leave for a long journey, I still need to go midway through. It makes no difference. Him going in a bottle was a great idea. Joe says, forgiven. Who in their right mind would pick up a bottle next to a rubbish bin? Really? But Christopher says, not forgiven. Why did he point to the bag afterwards? That was such a daft idea. So unfortunate as well that it was an apple juice bottle.
Well, that's very true.
Yes.
Apparently, some wise people have, shall we say, fabric softener.
Oh, yes.
Bottle, an empty one.
Yeah.
There because it has a wide
thing. Opening.
Just in case.
Yeah.
It's radio.co.uk on the email. we just need a hydration break before we proceed. What are you offering today, Suze?
Yes, for today's hydration break, I've gone with a nice pale ale called Wanna Go to the Sun. It's 4.2%, Citra, Equinaut and Eldorado hops.
Well, I'm sure that's a very refreshing beverage which you're offering
Delicious.
us. Today's confession comes from, it's signed Colin the Carpet Criminal.
Oh,
Okay,
dear.
Colin says, Father Simon in the assembled congregation of the morally flexible. Well, that's more true of some than others. I come before you today to confess a sin committed some 42 years ago when I was a young apprentice joiner, full of enthusiasm, confidence, and possessing absolutely no understanding of life or its consequences. At the family home, I had a workshop in the garden. It was a wonderful workshop except for one minor flaw. It had no electricity.
Oh.
Every time I wished to create something magnificent, I first had to unravel what felt like 3 miles of extension cable from the house. Naturally, I decided this situation required a permanent solution. Near the fuse board was a conveniently placed socket. Near the socket was an air brick. Near the air brick was my workshop. In my youthful mind, these facts combined to form what I believe was a stroke of engineering genius. All I needed to do was lift a corner of the carpet, remove a floorboard, run an extension lead beneath the floor, out through the air brick and into the workshop.
Simple, yeah.
Permanent power. Problem solved. And after all, I was a first-class apprentice joiner. What could possibly go wrong? The answer, Father Simon, was the carpet. The carpet had only recently been fitted and was secured with staples apparently forged by the devil himself. As I attempted to lift the edge, it resisted. I pulled harder. It resisted more. I pulled with the determination of a young man who desperately wanted electricity. And suddenly, it gave way. Unfortunately, it gave way by tearing several rather obvious large holes along the edge. At this point, a sensible person might have stopped. A sensible person might have considered the consequences. I, however, was focused on my workshop. The carpet problem was a matter for future Colin. Having achieved my electrical objective, I put everything back as best I could and hoped for the best. Some days later, my mother discovered the damage. After a thorough examination, she reached the only conclusion possible. Something has eaten the carpet, she said.
Yes.
Now, Father Simon, this was not a conclusion that I'd suggested. I merely stood nearby and allowed events to unfold. As the carpet was relatively new, my mother contacted the carpet shop to complain. This was a carpet that had cost hundreds of pounds. At this point, my heart dropped into my boots. Surely the shop would send an expert. Surely the expert would take one look and declare, this carpet has not been eaten, it's been attacked by an apprentice joiner with more ambition than skill. The shop instead arranged an inspection, and I considered confessing. I considered running away. Instead, I chose the coward's path and said absolutely nothing. The inspection day arrived while I was at work. When I returned home that evening, I nervously asked about the outcome. The inspector isn't sure, my mother said. They're sending a sample away for testing. Father Simon, I can still remember the feeling. Not only had I failed to escape justice, but science itself had now become involved. For several days I lived in fear. Somewhere I imagined men in white coats were peering through microscopes, preparing evidence that would expose me as the true culprit. And then came the phone call. The carpet shop had reached its verdict. Yes, they said, the carpet had indeed been eaten by something, probably before installation, whilst in storage. Carpet moths, probably. Carpet beetles, possibly. Also, silverfish that graze on starchy glues and the backings used to hold carpets together. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Wow.
Right.
Well, it's true.
Yeah.
That's who you can blame. Blame the silverfish. They would therefore replace the carpet free of charge. Father Simon, I was stunned. The carpet was replaced. My mother was vindicated. The experts had spoken and they were wrong. I, the actual destroyer of the carpet, walked free. So today I do not seek forgiveness from my mother, who quite reasonably believed that she was the victim of a carpet-eating menace. Nor do I seek forgiveness from the experts who somehow concluded that my handiwork was the work of wildlife. No, Father Sam, my thoughts are with the poor carpet shop owner who endured the full force of my mother's complaint and rage, paid for an entirely new carpet himself, and never knew that the real culprit was a teenage apprentice joiner trying to electrify a garden workshop. And here is the truly shameful part. For 42 years, I've carried this secret. I never confessed to my mother. I never confessed to my father, God rest his soul. I never confessed to the carpet shop. In fact, until Until this very moment, I have never told a single soul what really happened to that carpet. For 42 years, an innocent warehouse pest has carried the blame for my actions. The shop has long since disappeared, and I can only hope its proprietor enjoyed a long and peaceful retirement, blissfully unaware that the real culprit was not moths, mice, or a warehouse pest, or a silverfish, but one overconfident apprentice joiner armed with an extension lead, a crowbar, and an unrealistic belief in his own abilities. After 4 decades of silence, I placed myself at the mercy of the collective. I mean, you have to say, the fact that the shop is no longer there could well be Colin's problem, because a carpet is a very expensive thing, and maybe this was the final domino, or the first domino that set in chain financial catastrophe. What do you say, Suze?
Indeed, exactly what I was thinking, Colin. Maybe your misdemeanor was the start of that downfall of that carpet shop, and you just can't say. It might have been, who knows. Poor carpet shop owner. And also, danger, literally high voltage. That you just shouldn't be doing any of that stuff. Sounds very, very scary to me. Should have been glad that it was just the carpet and not you, Colin, but I'm not going to forgive you, I'm afraid.
I think, well, maybe we could do a bit of this.
It is.
I mean, it would have been, yes, because he was trying to get electricity through a brick and under a carpet, and that was crazy, Matthew.
Well, I'm going to say, if a carpet shop is going to be brought down by one piece of carpet, then it's not a very good carpet shop and was probably going to go under anyway.
Do you think?
I think so. Also, there was a lot going on with this carpet, wasn't there? With all the silverfish, we hadn't thought of that, had we? And it maybe with the silverfish were involved, but it just turned out to be him with the crowbar. But maybe with the silver, we can't discount it. That's what I'm saying.
You're bringing Cluedo into this.
Yes, so it could be that as well. Yes, for all of those reasons, because of the silverfish, never forget them, I'm going to forgive.
Colin the carpet criminal wants forgiveness. I'm not sure if he's going to get it. 61054. First word is Simon. Just before the news, a confession from Colin the carpet criminal, who vandalised his mother's carpet and let the poor moths and silverfish take the blame. Anyway, he's never owned up. Anyway, the people's verdict, here we go.
Not forgiven, says Carrie. I feel sorry for the man who owned the shop. No wonder it closed down.
Yes.
Rick in Cumbria, not forgiven. You slinked away like a coward. Where is your backbone? Letting someone else take the blame for your actions is not the act of a man. Don't ever darken my door.
Okay.
And John says, forgiven. Clearly, the carpet installer was the cause of the underlaying problem.
That was your comedy voice
It was, wasn't
that
it?
you were using.
Very good.
Okay, all right. Got a big 45 for you very shortly. If you have a confession, please send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Genuinely true. Anyway, let's just check in on the trolley, as we need a sharpener before we proceed. What have you got lined up today for us, Suze?
Indeed, a sharpener, this one, just for Matt. I thought you might like, we were talking about these earlier in the week, a lime margarita.
Oh, margaritas, yes.
This one, if you want to be lazy, is from a can, Cutwater Lime Margarita. It's the best one I've tasted, 12.5%, very delicious. Tequila, lime, triple sec.
There you go.
That's all you need.
Tequila.
All right, very good. Thank you very much indeed. So we'll have a couple of those a little bit later on. And Janny sends in today's confession. That's Janny, not Infantino. This is Janny.
Oh, right, I see.
Someone else.
Yeah.
Simon and team, I feel the time has finally come to unburden my soul. At the grand age of 62, I must confess to a crime that took place when I was a naive 14 or 15-year-old schoolgirl. Every single morning on the way to senior school, my routine was set in stone. I would call in at my friend Anne's house. She lived directly opposite the school gates, which meant we could maximize our gossiping time right up until the first bell rang.
Yes.
Very useful to have a friend like that. Now, Anne's pride and joy was her tropical fish tank. It was a spectacular, shimmering underwater kingdom filled with angelfish, sharks, guppies. Sharks?
Sharks?
Baby sharks.
Well, they grow into big sharks.
Guppies, and my absolute favourite, tiny little neons. To give them their full title, the neon tetra is one of the most popular tropical fish in the world because they are so vibrant, shiny, and full of life. They were barely the size of a fingernail, darting around like little flashes of bright red and electric blue light. One fateful morning, I walked in to find Anne on her hands and knees in front of the tank. She had just finished giving it a deep clean and was in the middle of a roll call. There were supposed to be exactly 10 neon fish, but she was panicking.
Oh, no.
Naturally, I dropped to my knees beside her to help. Now, Simon, I don't know if you or the team have ever tried to conduct a census on a school of tiny, frantic fish. No. But it is an absolute nightmare.
Yes.
Just do not sit still or swim still. We counted. There were 9. We counted again. We got 9. We counted again. We got 9.
Got 9 again.
We counted again.
Let's do it again, yeah.
However many times we counted,
Yes, oh, right.
it was always 9.
Okay.
They were darting in and out of the classic aquarium paraphernalia, weaving past the sunken pirate wreck,
Yes.
doing laps around the stone castle, and hiding behind the plastic treasure chest that periodically opened to blast bubbles at them. Fun time being a fish, huh?
Yeah.
Not to mention the swaying silk foliage. Where are you, little neon? We whispered. Where are you? I don't know if you had pathetic voices like that,
No.
but anyway. Before we could solve the mystery, the authoritative voice of Anne's mother boomed through the house. Right, you two, get off to school before you're both late.
Oh,
She did.
Yes, you sound like your man. Mess.
It's just a natural voice.
Oh, right. Okay.
We scrambled to our feet, grabbed our bags, and bolted for the door. But as I crossed the threshold into the fresh morning air, I felt a strange, distinct sensation on my leg. Remember, Simon, this is the era of the mandatory school skirt. No trousers for us. I looked down, and there, stuck firmly to my bare kneecap, was a perfectly flat, squashed, but still undeniably bright red and blue little neon fish.
Oh.
The 10th fish. The missing fish number 10.
Oh, dear.
The horror dawned on me. When we had both been kneeling on the carpet, filtering through the artificial seaweed, the 10th little neon must have leapt from the bucket in a desperate bid for freedom, only to meet its demise under my teenage kneecap.
Oh, dear.
I froze. I looked at Anne, who was happily walking ahead of me. I looked at my knee. I simply didn't have the heart to tell her that her beloved pet was currently serving as a temporary kneecap accessory.
Ooh.
It was a squashed fish. So with a swift yet guilty motion, whatever that looks like, I flicked the poor little thing off my leg and into her mum's pristine front garden,
Oh.
where it lay forever,
Wow, not forever.
dead. Till it was eaten by a bird. I never said a word. I must admit, when I got home and tried to tell my parents and brothers, I couldn't get the words out because I was laughing so hard. The sheer absurdity of it, Simon. Anyway, decades have passed, but the guilt remains. When I eventually got married, I bought my very own tropical fish tank, and as a lifelong penance, every single neon tetra I have ever owned has been named Anne. I must now formally apologise to Anne, her mother's front garden, and of course the departed spirit of neon number 10, if indeed fish have spirits. Do you think they do?
I'm sure they do.
Do you think they
maybe
do,
they
Suze?
don't.
Do fish have spirits? Well,
Nice
very
thoughts.
good.
Yeah,
okay.
very like.
With
Yeah.
deepest apologies, my head hanging in total unreserved shame. That's Janny. Okay, well, I mean, that's a bit of a shocking story.
It is very, yeah.
Was that Santa Susie coming back?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes,
right. Okay,
there
you're
she
there.
is.
You disappeared for a while,
Okay.
so I wasn't
Sorry.
quite sure. No, that's fine. Do you think fish have spirits?
I do. Everyone has a spirit, right?
I've got no idea. I'm just interested.
I think so.
I don't think fish do. What about worms?
Yeah.
Worms
I'm
have
going to say
spirits.
everybody. Oh, yeah. Why not?
Okay, why not, indeed? Let's get into this. Let's spend half an hour giving up the phone lines. That's what I think.
It'll be a different
Do
show
worms
altogether.
have spirits?
Okay.
What do you say, Suze?
Well, Danny, it was a while ago, and I do feel sorry for her. But surely you would have felt it when you knelt on it, wouldn't you have realised a bit sooner? And I think she should have disposed of it a bit further away than the garden.
Do you think?
But yeah, so I'm not going to forgive.
Okay, Brother Matthew.
Well, I personally think that neon fish knew the risks. That it was making the bid for freedom, and it knew it was hoping that the carpet was going to be enough to sustain it. Didn't know it was going to get knelt on by a 14-year-old girl, and that was going to be the end of it. But it knew the risks, and it decided, well, I fancy my chances on the carpet rather than with the pirate ship.
And also, I have a spirit, so
I
will
have
live on
that
forever.
spirit as well that's going to sustain
Yeah.
me when I get outside, or maybe I'll get eaten by a bird. But we don't know, do we? Because of the spirit thing. So for all of those reasons, I'm going to forgive.
Okay, does Janny get your forgiveness? This is the question. 61054, first word is Simon. Forgiveness or no for Janny? Just before the news, we had a confession from Janny, who basically went to her friend Anne's house when they were 14 years old, and she killed a fish. Well, it was an accident. She knelt on a neon alt tetra. Although you have to say, if the neon tetra was in a tank with a bunch of sharks, then it was going to meet a difficult life anyway.
Yes, it was.
To be honest. Anyway, the people's verdict is in. Here we go.
Forgiven, says Ollie. Pet fish are a nightmare. I'm fairly sure mine ended up eating its friend.
Oh.
Mike says, not forgiven. Why did she just fling the fish into the front garden? It deserved a proper burial, or at least being flushed down the loo.
Oh, that's moving.
That's more dignified,
Is it?
apparently.
I don't think so.
Debbie in Dorset, though, says, forgiven. I've worked in a pets and aquatic shop, and doing a stock take of little neon tetras as they dart about like bullets is no mean feat. Just as you get to the end of the count, they all start swimming in the opposite direction. I think odd numbers are better than even when it comes to fish. So actually, 9 is better than 10.
Why?
Because of being able to count them. When
Yes,
you've got odd numbers, it's easier, isn't it?
No, it makes no
Good
difference
point,
at all.
Debbie.
Confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk.